Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta says we're at real risk of the conflict in the Mideast escalating. Roll tape.
There's no question that that it increases the danger of escalation in the Middle East. The killing of a Hamas leader in Beirut obviously raises the specter of Hezbollah doing something in retaliation. So we are at a point where, without question, there is a real danger of escalation in the war in the Middle East.
Retired four-star General Jack Keane joins me now. General, in your opinion, what is the risk of a direct clash between the United States and Iran?
Oh, I think it's minimal, to be frank about it. I also know that former Secretary of Defense Panetta wants us to do more in terms of deterring Iran and taking more aggressive action. So that was a partial representation, of his thought process. I mean, what has happened ever since the October 7th attack? The Iranian-backed militias, all of them, Hezbollah, the ones in Iraq, the ones in Syria, the Houthis, they've all increased their level of violence and conflict operations since the October 7th attack. Why is that? Because they're supporting Hamas and they're supporting Iran's objectives in the region, which are what? Number one, to drive the United States military presence out of the region, and number two, to destroy the state of Israel. So you have to understand strategically what is happening here. Don't get bogged down in the small tactics of it, and understand that the driver here are the Iranians. I applaud the attack that took place in Baghdad to kill an Iranian-backed militia leader. That was the right thing to do. But it will not stop them from attacking, because we're not dealing with the leadership that is behind all of this, and that is Iran. And we have to take them on. And I know you dealt with that previously in a prior segment. And I totally agree with confrontation with Iran. Now, your question is a valid one. If we do that, if we attack Iran's capabilities, will that lead to a war with Iran? My understanding of this for 43 years, looking at Iran's behavior, is that that will likely not happen. Is it a possibility? Of course there's a possibility of it, but we shouldn't let that possibility hamstring us when the facts don't suggest that they would. Why not? Because the whole basis, Stuart, for the proxies, and it's been a brilliant strategy for them since the early 1980s, is to have the proxies do the fighting so they don't have to be involved. They know full well if they get into a direct confrontation with the United States, in other words, they're willing to escalate if we attack them and take us on. If they're willing to do that, they know they're going to lose their regime. That's a war that they cannot win. And everything Iran is doing is in their national interest to preserve their regime. That's why they want a nuclear weapon, and to drive the United States out of the region. That is what is going on here. And to continuously avoid confrontation with them invites more aggression. And you've been documenting it here week after week after week.
Yep. How far should we go? Should we attack Iranian oil installations? Should we attack their nuclear installations? That would be an act of war.
Well, anytime you're firing a shot at an adversary, that's an act of war. So, I mean, I wouldn't underscore it the way you do. I think we would conduct a limited, measured attack on Iran. It would... not an all-out act of war where we're hitting multiple military bases at the same time. We're taking down their headquarters in Tehran. We're destroying their entire infrastructure, something you saw us do in Baghdad. That's really an act of war. This would be a limited attack. And the Central Command that oversees the region, they have a target list of what to do here. My bias is the IRGC Quds Force is overseeing and directing these proxies. I would go after their training base, IRGC training base, some of their military bases, or even their headquarters, and focus it that way, because that's in the chain of command of what is happening. But can you go after the oil fields? Yes. Okay. Could you go after the nuclear enterprise? That would involve a much more complicated operation. I doubt seriously we would do anything on that level of scale. Israel.
Well, General,
but yes, we should take them on.
This is strong stuff, General, but let me just transfer our attention for a second to the IDF, to Israel. The IDF withdrawing some troops from Gaza. Can you tell us why they're doing this?
Yeah, well, there's a number of factors that are taking place here. Certainly, there's a sense of exhaustion and fatigue that's also affecting the IDF. They've been going at this day in and day out for some time. The second thing is they have a lot of concern about their reservists and their economy. Many of the reservists obviously have full-time jobs, and they're out there working, and those jobs are being sacrificed. So they're pulling 5 brigades out of northern Gaza, leaving 3 in place. And what are those 3 going to do? They're likely going to finish the clearing operation and establish the buffer zone that the Israelis have been talking about down in the south and central portion. And by the way, the Gazan Hamas brigades, the 2 of them that are in that area, are largely ineffective as a result of the combat operations. It doesn't mean that they can't still conduct ambushes and small squad-type attacks against the IDF. They can, but they no longer exist as a cohesive brigade. And in the south and in central part, also, the reality is at least one of those brigades of the 2 that are in that area is now ineffective in terms of Hamas. Okay. The Israelis are not pulling any troops out of there. They're going to keep them involved.
Got it.
So there's a transition taking place in combat operations inside of Gaza, and I just wanted our audience to understand that.
You're a retired 4-star general. You know what you're talking about, and thanks for being on the program this morning. Jack Keane, sir, thank you very much.
Yeah, great talking to Stuart, as always.